right, we are back. Guys, remember, if you haven't subscribed, go ahead and do so. And if not, that's fine, but let's get going. So in the last video, we did the array of objects, and that was a pretty easy one because arrays are very easy to map. And then each array had a group of objects in it. You know, sometimes you don't have objects inside of an array. Sometimes you have just a string, a bunch of string, or a bunch of values, or a bunch of numbers. That's also fine. But dealing with arrays is always going to be easy. Okay, so if you have any chance at choice, always go for arrays or turn things into arrays. All right, so today we are going to go on with we did array of objects. Let's just do object of arrays, which is going to be a little bit backwards from this. So I'm gonna go ahead and click close this custom box and the package JSON. I mean the database. No, actually no. I'm gonna need the database JSON. I'm gonna need that here because I'm gonna be constantly referencing back to this. So we're done with this one, and now we're doing object of arrays, which is this one right here. Okay, so let's explain the data. Let's go over the data a little bit first before we go further into this. So what is happening with an object and array? As opposed to an array of object where you have an array of objects, in this one you have an object that contains two arrays in it, and then each one of those arrays is going to have the objects in it, and then those are going to continue to have an array for the leaders, which are going to also be objects in it. So everything starts to look the same inside here. It's the entry point that is going to matter. It's the entry point that is going to make it different. And in this case, the entry point is not being served to you as an object, but it's served to you as an array. And then each array has two as an object. In this case, the state is not being, or the API is not being served to you as an array, is being served to you as an object. And such object has two pieces of array inside, two independent arrays. And then each array is named good guys or bad guys. Okay, so that's what happens when you get this kind of format. When you get this kind of format from your server-side guy, let's say your server-side guy likes this format, and that's what he's doing to serve it to you, then that's what he's going to do. He's going to serve you a huge object, right? A main object that is going to contain everything in it, and then inside each object he's going to put all the arrays that he's going to need to put in there, and then he's going to label each one of these arrays something. And in this case it's called good guys and bad guys. Okay, so that's basically, so you're never going to get this, for example. You're never going to get that because, as you can see, there's an error in there because these arrays are supposed to be named. So there will always be something there that you can use. Always there will be something. Same thing for objects. If he was going to send objects in like this, if he was doing the array of objects, that will also throw an error because objects don't need to be named. So actually they shouldn't be named. So at least you can trust that this structure is at least going to always be consistent in that matter, and that's good. So how do we get this data? All right, so let's get to it, and this is going to be object of arrays. So first thing we're going to need is we're going to open the object of arrays page, which we haven't created, and we're going to bring in some stuff from the other array to make this a little faster. Like, for example, we know we're going to need all of this crap here. So I'm going to go ahead and bring that there. So this will make things a little bit faster for us because we don't need to talk over all of this. We can just use it right away. And we'll go through this part here in a second. Let's go down to this typography stuff here. Let's copy all of this, and then we're probably going to need to update that, but let's just use it the way it is right now. And let's just comment that out because that's not really going to happen yet. And then everything here is going to be basically the same, except it's going to be object of arrays. Alright, so that's done. And then the custom box, user fader, all that stuff. Alright, so let's bring in all of this stuff, the states function, to call this the API, and the use effect. And let's bring that in there like that. All right, so first of all, let's figure out the call, and let's get the call right. So we are calling the object of array, so this one. So we change, let me close this one, yeah. So we're gonna change that from to object of arrays. All right, so let's just stop here for a second, close that, comment that as well, because we don't know yet. No, actually, let's not comment that. Let's leave that open. We don't know if we're gonna use a state yet, so all right. I mean, yeah, we're gonna use a state, but not that specific one. So let's just first, every time you make a GET request or something like that, at least try to get the data into a console log so that you can at least know what you're working with. All right. So let's hit save. Object of arrays and inspect. See the components. And all right, what am I? Let me see. Okay. So those errors were from prior. All right, so here you go. This is the console log. This console log right here. That is console logging the results that I'm getting from this call right here. And I do this basically just to see if I am getting data or not. And as you can see, I am getting an object. You see the little brackets up there. I am getting an object that contains two arrays in it, bad guys and good guys. And that is consistent to what I'm actually doing. So that's actually good. Okay. You obviously don't have this choice to check your console log for this, because this would not be living in your computer. Otherwise, you would already have it, right? So that's why this console log exists, and this is why I do this console logging, so that I can get my API shape and look at it, because I don't always have this sample to look at. Remember, we're fetching data from a DB-JSON that we already have, okay? But normally we wouldn't be doing this. This file wouldn't exist. We wouldn't be calling things from a JSON. We will be calling things in here from an API that is in a remote location, and you can see. So the only way that you can see what's inside that API is by after you make a call and you bring it back in JSON format, then you can console log it. That way you can actually see what's in it and be like, okay, I see it. There is an object, there is two arrays, and each array contains the good guys and the bad guys, and then that is broken down further later by each one having another array with leaders in it. Okay, so that's how you know what it looks like. So first thing you need to know is you cannot map this initial state, okay, because it's an object. Okay, the map function only works for arrays, does not work for objects. You can use object keys and object entries and object values, and you can go that route if you wanted to, but trust me when I tell you this, it is a pain in the butt to use object keys, object entries, object values, and all that stuff, which is what basically allows you to kind of work with an object and itemize, or not itemize, but iterate through the individual values that are in it and make key value pairs. But unless you're very, very comfortable with objects, with object keys and stuff like that, I would probably just stay away from that and just try to get whatever I can get from it into states of array, and to array states that I can work with. So what do we have here is that we have this guy right here, which is an array, and this guy right here, which is an array. So instead of dealing with the master array of all things, I'm just going to deal with these two guys independently, the bad guys and good guys, because they are arrays. So what that tells me is that I need to be using two pieces of state instead of one massive state for the whole thing. So instead of using states as state, we're gonna call one good guys, and we're gonna set good guys. I think let's do this, set good guys. Yeah, and then we're gonna copy that, and then we're gonna create another one for bad guys. We're gonna set the bad guys there. Alright, so now we know that we have created two places that we can store the arrays that are included inside of these two different locations, two different endpoints. So when I come down here to this, remember how I set the state, the result, into my state? Well, it's basically going to be the same thing, only we don't have one, we have two of them now. We have this set good guys and we had to set bad guys. We had to set one and then we have to set the other one. So what we're going to do is we're going to, from the result right here, we're going one level in to bad guys, which is this one, result that bad guys, and I think that has a high thing, an underscore. Yep, it does. And the other one is going to be good guys. Okay, so now that I have said that, let's make sure that we actually did get this. Okay, so let's just console log that down here, and we're gonna console log the call for good guys and console log this call here, not call but this setter for bad guys, and hit enter, and you can see it perfectly right there. Just to know that we are in the right place, we're just gonna even name it, put a comma in there. There you go. Sorry. Good guys collection. Let's just call it, yeah, collection. Yeah. And let's just now grab that, put it here, call it bad guys. Bad guys. There we go. There you go. We're getting the good guys collection in here, which is USA, Great Britain, and France, and then the bad guys collection is coming in here, Germany, Italy, and Japan. So we're on the right track. All right, cool. So now that we know that we are getting the right information in here, we are actually in fact setting it into this here, we have to actually now make use of this right here so that we can use them. So we're gonna come down here, and where we have this flex right here, now we're going to need two of them because we have two pieces of state that we need to map independently. So this up here is going to stay the same because that's just a paid title. That's going to be always the same. But then here we're going to use one on the left and another one on the right. Okay, and that is going to be all, and yeah, and that's all going to be encapsulated into one big box so that we can still grab, so that we can still do this format here so that it looks the same. You still have to have one big call and then separate the call in one big box, and then separate the big box into two small boxes, one for each, one for the good guys, one for the bad guys. So yeah, that's why you're doing this. And again, this is something that I discovered afterwards, and then I'm saving you the trouble now and the time. So don't feel bad if when you start doing things on your own, and, you know, you don't know this stuff beforehand. Technically you wouldn't. All right, so on my left I'm gonna put, I'm gonna need to add some CSS, so bear with me for a second. So this is gonna display flex with the justified content, so it has space around it, and then I am adding a little bit of spacing to these guys here. Yep, right there. All right, so now I'm gonna make the custom call, the call to the custom box. So the first thing we're gonna do is, we're gonna do this. Little by little, so you can see. Come on, I'm saying Copilot. Sometimes it's great, sometimes it's a pain in the ass. All right, so custom box right here, and then now just like we did before, we know we need two pieces of state to call in there, two props, sorry, not two pieces of state, two props that we saved that we're going to be using, and one is going to be giving us this right here, the name, and the other one is going to give us the piece of data. Let's go back to object arrays. So how do we grab this and how do we grab this? Okay, so in this case, the data is gonna come from, there you go. In this case, the data is coming directly from the call that I already made, right? There it is right there. The data is already mapped. It's already at the very top level. So you can just call it exactly what you're calling it right here, right? So that will be good guys. There's no dot anything because you're not mapping. You're not mapping, but you're not going further in, right? You're not, yeah, and you're not mapping. There's no need to map to anything because you're already receiving the data already at the level that you receiving the API call, and it's already available. There's no extra level that you gotta go to. And then now in this case, because you are getting this level and there is nothing in there that says side, you're not actually getting a side. So in this case, instead of making it programmatic and calling it good guides that side or something like that, which you don't have, then you can just go ahead and actually make this one not dynamic but static. Just static data, call it good guys, because you know you're calling the good guys. So you can do this in this case because you know you're calling the good guys. And then now we're going to do the same thing for the bad guys here, and we're gonna call the other piece of state that we saved the bad guys, the result that bad guys. We're gonna go in there and do that, and we're gonna put in here bad guys, and then change the label to bad guys, and then I'm gonna hit save. And once I hit save, here's my object of arrays, and everything works as I expected. Everything works great. All right, we're done with that. But let's talk about one thing first. What if I had created a state, a major state, and then that major state, then I would have grabbed that state, which would have been this right here, which would have been this right here, and then somehow a way to map through these two guys right here. Okay, well, yes, you could do that. You could grab that good guys and turn it into a state, basically push it into a state so that you can map that state, and then use down here how you using result good guys. You can just basically use result as a set state and then basically map here result that good guys, right? You could have done that, but that basically will turn into more problems later because you don't even have a side in there because you're not getting it from the actual, you're not getting it right here. You see how these have sides? You don't get it over here. So why make your life harder into mapping an object and turn it into an array when you know that the actual data that you need is here? Okay, it will make sense if you had something, for example, if you had something like does that make sense? I don't know if this is going to make sense or not, but my data bucket, I don't know, data, something like that, I don't know, sites, good guys. Site doesn't even make sense. ID, there you go. That will make sense. That will be something you see. Like that. So you could get something like this. You could have cases where you have in an object you have this state and you have this state, but you also have something else here. You have, for example, a just a string. Okay, in this case, an ID for everything. Okay, you could have objects, I believe, too. Yeah, you can have objects which will contain. Let me just grab one of these as an example. I'm just gonna grab this entire thing here and add it in there. Or maybe you shouldn't have like that. I don't know. That's probably gonna. Oh, it has to be named. Okay, so it has to be named. So I don't know. Let's see. Name it ugly guys. Let's say you have another one that says ugly guys, like that. So now you have an ID, which is you have inside this object. You have first you have a regular string, then you have an object inside of an object, which we're gonna get to it. That's gonna be here. Object of objects. We're gonna get to that. And then you have arrays inside this object. So you have four different types of four different types of data inside of one object: a string, or in this case, a number, an object, and then arrays. Okay. So you see how this could be confusing. If you look at the object of arrays here, page that we're doing, and I refresh my page. Sorry, let me go ahead and save this. And then I refresh my page. You notice that nothing is breaking. Okay, and the reason why nothing is breaking is because I am identifying here exactly which pieces of data I need to use and passing it into this right here. If I would just call, for example, state, and call it set state. If I would do this, which is what we did initially in the object into the array of object, we call them the massive state, and then mapped inside it, right? So if we do this state set state, and then do a setter here for set state, and we pass results, you know, the actual main results thing, the entire thing into it, right? We're basically going to be pushing all of this crap inside of that state right there, right? So let's go ahead and keep saving. So far so good. So far we're not breaking anything, because all we're doing is just pushing all of that inside the state. Now when we go here and we actually decide to use that state is where we go into complications. We run into complications. And the reason why we run into complications is because we can't map it. The reason why we can map it is because it's not an array. It can be mapped. Okay? If it was an array, yes, but it's not an array. It can be mapped. So the best way to do it is to create a state for this one, another state for this one, just like we created a state for that and a state for that. So it just complicates everything. So it's better to, instead of going this route and then mapping that huge state, is to just don't worry about them, don't worry about getting the big call and setting it into a state. Just grab the actual state that you're going to need and create a state for those, and a placement for those, and then just map out here and into your UI by targeting specifically those states you created. Okay, so that's what's going to make it, you know, more bug free, so to speak. You know, it's not going to complicate your life when the API changes a little bit. All right, so we've done array of objects and we've done object of arrays. We are about halfway there now. We need object of objects and array of arrays, which are weird and very rare, but they could happen. So we'll get to that in the next one. All right, see you.